And I like that picture in the back on the stand back there. I see Brother West smiling back there.
Oh man, yeah, I got Wes, I got Miles and Bird, and I got the day in Harlem, and
Yeah, great
Billy
day in Harlem.
Holiday. Yeah, man, Wes is my man. He's my number one.
Yeah.
He's a great one, man. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our fourth installment to LA Guitar Hang, and today I'm featuring the great Jacques Lesure, and he's been a mainstay in the LA scene for a long time, originally from Detroit, and I'd love to hear, how he got started and some of the stories of the people he got to play with, and maybe some of his philosophy on guitar and whatever else comes up. So I want to thank you, Jacques, for coming in today.
Thank you, brother. This is a very, very good thing that you're doing, Dwayne. It's very important, and it really, this time period is making us really come together in a very remarkable way. I think really it's given more. I mean, we think that the live thing is intimate, but this thing has given us a chance to be a lot more intimate, actually. You
Yeah.
know, than even the live thing is, like out in public and stuff. Because when we're out in the gigs and things, people are like, hey man, running around. We're there. This gives us a chance to really drill down deeper into who a person really is.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've only met you once or twice at the Parker Room when you had the
Hmm.
Tuesday night thing going, and I didn't get a real chance to talk to you because there's so many people there, and it's just
Yeah,
kind of
lot
crazy. Yeah,
lot going on at that place.
yeah, yeah. That was a great little jam you had going on with you got Smitty on drums and
Yeah,
Michael was Ranganese. Is that how you say his last name?
not recognized. That was Pete Kuzma on organ.
Oh, that's right. Okay, okay. I got the wrong guy. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Raganese is good though. He's
Yeah.
good. I know Raganese.
Who was the guy you were playing with recently when I like a Friday or two ago when I watched you guys? Do you remember the
That's
who was
that's the same guy, Pete Kuzma. Same guy.
I got the wrong I have the wrong guy in mind when I think of the name, so I'll have to get that right.
Think the basketball player Kuzma. You
Okay,
know?
nice,
Yeah,
nice, cool, man. So,
yeah.
so I know you came from Detroit, and that's such an incredible wellspring of great musicians, especially with jazz and most musicians. What was that like growing up in Detroit when you were a kid? What was the scene like back then?
Well, I was born in the '60s, so I came into fruition as a teenager and a kid. Would be in the, you'll say, I was 13 around 1975.
Oh
You
wow.
know, so I was a teenager at a very good point when there was a lot of music.
Mhm.
There was music in Detroit. And we forget that there's a book called Before Motown
Mhm.
that talks about all the jazz musicians. I mean, if we think about it, they weren't there when I was there. They were well gone, but it's the home of Barry Harris,
Right.
Tommy Flanagan, Hank Jones, Sir Roland Hanna, Kirk Lightsey, just that many piano players, you
Wow.
know, not to mention Elvin Jones and Joe Henderson and Betty Carter and a lot of great musicians, Paul Chambers, you know.
Yeah.
So that legacy and that level of understanding of the music was always there, not to mention a lot of the great gospel acts that I was fortunate. I'll talk about that later. Where I started out playing gospel music, so it's the home of the Winans and the Clark sisters and Commission and those great gospel groups. It's also the home of Don Was, who is now the president of Blue Note Records. It's
Yeah.
the home of Ray Parker Jr., big on the R&B circuit.
Right.
Um, Also, it's the home of Ted Nugent
Yeah.
and Bob Seger and Kid Rock and Eminem.
And punk rock with the
Right,
55 and the Stooges, right?
right, exactly. So all of that music is there. It's also the Detroit Symphony Orchestra was also one of the greatest orchestras in the country. So yeah, there was a wealth of information. When I was in high school, most of the teachers in high school were professional musicians. These guys played music, actually played music. So it wasn't like they were day gigging, and they had a sensibility of the music that wasn't just a music educator. They were like, yeah, I do this. This is the job I have. But as soon as I leave here, I'm going to shed and I'll be at the union tonight with the band, and we'll all be practicing. And they had gigs where you come. I mean, your band director, you know, and they held us to such a high degree of excellence. And as you mentioned, Motown musicians, there were a lot of you know, and being a kid, I wouldn't necessarily know who they all were, but not until much later when I learned about the Funk Brothers. But you see a guy sitting at a bar when you're in a club 17, 18, and they're like, who's he? Oh, that's Pistol Allen. You know, you go, that's Pistol. Who's he? He's a great drummer, man. But of course, he was, you know, at the end, you know, and
Yeah.
we didn't always know who these guys were. But I met a lot of those guys, the Bob Babbitts and the Pistol Allens and the Dennis Coffees and those guys.
Yeah.
So growing up in Detroit, not to mention, it was, you know, Detroit is the seat of the Industrial Revolution. So
Mhm.
Detroit had a buzz about it. You know, every year the new cars, we saw them first. The new,
Yeah.
you know, the new models, you know, of what's coming out, you know, and our fathers worked at the factory, you know, and or somebody's father worked at the factory, you know. So it was a very there was a lot of money and wealth and not, you know, and just a great vibe growing up during that time period in Detroit. Everybody had a great car, a nice boat on the river, you know, a nice summer home up northern Michigan. It was really a nice situation.
That's cool. Did your dad work in the car industry?
My dad was a cop. My dad was in the police department, you know, so that was also a very interesting job at that point too in the
Yeah.
70s.
Wow.
Hmm.
Now, how did anyone in your family play music? Like how they got you into music, or like was it a musical family in general?
Oh, you know, my dad, as a kid, you know, dabbled in the band or whatever in school, but you know, no one was really that into it as a professional or anything. But I'll say that I was never discouraged. Wasn't necessarily overly encouraged,
Mhm.
you know, but they didn't stop my longings to what I want to do, and they supported it as much as they knew how to support it. You know, because most parents knew your kids in the band, they don't really know the inner workings. So that's why it's good to have professionals outside that can recognize things and convey that information to the parents. For instance, I spent all my summers at Interlochen Arts Academy.
Oh, I've
You
heard
know,
that. That's really
yeah,
cool.
and it's a very important place for music for, you know, for young people, and you know, and they have a school there that's all year round. It's a great school to go to. But I was blessed to go every summer in my teenage years to Interlochen and spend like 8 9 weeks among some of the greatest young musicians in the absolute world, and literally they came from all over the world. So at an early age, man, I was like impressed upon, you know, like dedication, commitment, and no BS. Because there were some people that couldn't speak English who were my age. I mean, I was pretty good for my age, but these people were like incredible.
Yeah.
And their work ethic, you know, they used to, you know, we used to have a thing called forced fun. And what that was they would make you stop the counselors and teachers, hey, you guys got to stop practicing and go out and play some volleyball. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Enjoy
and you see
yourself.
some guys say, man, I don't want to stop practicing. I got to go play volleyball. Yeah, you got to go do something different. You can't just sit here for all day and just practice and then go to ensemble. You got to go out. You know, we have a beautiful lake. There's lakes here. There's woods. There's trees.
Yeah.
There's games. There's other stuff to do. It's time to go do that. And I learned that at an early age about balance, you know, because some of the kids would have just stayed there forever,
Yeah,
you
and they
know.
have nothing to say per se. I mean, they might be amazing at the music, but they have no life
They
experience.
have no life experience, and also their whole identity, and we can talk about that later as we get older, was wrapped up in that one thing. So, for instance, and I was in the jazz world, so it wasn't so crucial, but in the classical side of Interlochen during the summers, they had these large orchestras that were like, you know, a lot of kids, and they'd have these challenges, you know, and so the third violinist would challenge the second, and they try to move up and all that. They play these pieces, and you would see people actually, you know, there were a couple of suicide attempts when somebody lost,
Oh
you
man.
know, or you know, or just all kinds of inability to cope, you know, because
Yeah.
I got bumped a chair or I didn't make it or whatever, you know. And then there was a lot of snarkiness, you know,
Yeah.
and lack of compassion, you know, with just all those competitive nature, you know. So in the jazz world, either it was only two bands, the A band and B band, and you knew as soon as you saw that you should be where you should be, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Wow.
no debate about it, you know, you know, you know.
did you start off playing jazz guitar, or were you in other kinds of music first and then got into jazz later?
No, I started out. My very first instrument was, well, my mom tells the story, and I have the picture to back it up. That in the '60s, around my third or fourth birthday, there were all these toys, and
Mhm.
all I cared about there was a bunch of toys, but all I cared about was this xylophone thing,
Mhm.
that about one octave with colored
Oh
with
yeah, for those.
yeah, and that's all I wanted to play with. And to this day, those colors mean something to me. Those tones,
Okay.
red means C to
Oh,
me now. Yeah, so it's very interesting. But so that was my, I guess, early forays. Then in third grade, I got a trumpet,
okay.
and I liked it a little bit, but I didn't really like it. It didn't gel with me. Then I went to bassoon,
Mhm.
and I
Wow.
got a bassoon, and I really liked the bassoon because it was just different. And first of all, nobody played it, you know,
Yeah.
and it was just, every time you put it together, it was like, this is really kind of hip. You know what I'm saying? And
Sound.
yeah, and the sound of it, and then you had to deal with certain things. There's some meticulousness to a double reed instrument, oboe and bassoon, that you have to pay. The reed. There's a lot of stuff, so I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And I grew up playing in church, started in church music. The
Mhm.
bassoon really didn't work in our church. I went to a Pentecostal fiery church,
Oh,
and I'm sitting there playing a bassoon. It doesn't quite get it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
You know, but so I kind of co-opted the guitar at the same time, and of course the guitar won out.
Yeah.
Around 10 years old, the guitar kind of came into fruition,
So you played
and
gospel music in the beginning
yeah, yes, gospel music, and but still taking lessons.
then. Mhm.
Like from your music store guitar teachers. And then I had another great guy who was a teacher. My first, I'll say, formal cat was a guy named Joe LaDuca. He's a big writer now. He writes a lot for a lot of the. I mean, he's really successful Hollywood writer for film. But he
Yeah.
was a great guitar player, Joe LaDuca. If you're looking back up, and he studied with Joe Fava out of Detroit, and who had the Fava guitar method for years.
I've heard that. Was that
Yeah,
classical or more jazz based?
it was classical with a little bit of other stuff in it, but it was more guitar technique based. It wasn't any real direction. Joe Fava was more a classical guitar player though,
Yeah.
but he was big in Detroit. Joe Fava Studios and all of that. So Joe LaDuca was one of his proteges, and I was able to get with Joe. Later on in years, and he gave me my first Johnny Smith. That book Johnny Smith has out. He
Yeah, I
gave me
have that.
You're right, right. So he gave me that book, and I remember my first chord melody, the Christmas song that he taught me how to play that. So he was my first teacher. Then I discovered that my dad had records galore, and now I'm going through and I'm getting all of these Wes Montgomery and Kenny Burrell Christmas record and George Ben. So that's when my ears started perking up.
Mhm.
Also, along with that time period, Grover Washington was really strong. So a lot of Eric Gale and that kind of and the band Stuff and those different kind of bands, I was hearing those sounds. Be, prior to them, before it was smooth jazz, it was just, I'll say, it was more accessible
Mhm.
music, but it was really good music. You had your Crusaders and your those different kind of bands that were great musicians. It wasn't smooth jazz, and they were just doing their thing you
Mhm.
know. So
Yeah.
that's how I started doing that. High school jazz band,
Mhm.
stage man, reading those semi-nestico charts,
Yeah.
you know, and all of that.
Yeah.
Then it hit me that this is something I really want to do, you know. And then the college thing came in.
Where'd you go to college?
Two colleges, Wayne State and Berkeley.
Oh,
So yeah, so both of those were very instrumental in that. Also, they were, like I said, they were lessons along the way. Some with some pretty famous cats, like a cat named Grant Green.
it was Grant Green.
By duress. Let me tell you what happened. So
Oh,
maybe I was about 13, 14,
mhm.
something like that. And during that time period, man, I was into Earth, Wind, and Fire, R&B cats, Les Paul's,
Mhm.
Les Paul, a Strat, that was a guitar. Even a see-through Dan Armstrong plexiglass, that was a guitar.
Yeah.
You know, an L5 meant that you were a country, boring old man.
Yeah,
All
sure.
right.
Yeah.
Back in the set, any that kind of guitar, Roy Clark. I don't want to even, that kind of thing. Even though I was still finally interested in watching those guys like Glenn Campbell and Roy. I used to watch Hee Haw. It's like, but that's country. But I said, man, but inside of me, they're really good. You know.
That's the show that got me. I told this on my last podcast. That's the show that made me interested in music and guitar. My parents, because I was like 3 years old when that show was on, and I would be
Hmm.
obsessed with it. So it's Roy Clark and all that that got me into guitar. I never was into country that much, but just the guitar itself,
Right, you're right. And during that time period, you would see Roy Clark on some obscure show. Like they'd be like, some, even back in the day, they had variety shows. Remember that? It'd be like, today we got Muhammad Ali and Roy Clark. It'd be, and it'd be the cat interviewing them. And it
Yeah,
came on in the middle of the day, like Mike. I remember the Mike Douglas show.
yeah,
And he'd have on some comedian, and it'd be he interviewed the greatest champion Ali, and then it'd be Roy Clark, and they'd be picking Chet Atkins, and you know.
yeah.
But I'm gonna go a little forward. So anyway, so my father came home one day and said, "Hey man, there's this guy. You're gonna go." I met this guy, and he's in town. He's a great guitarist, very famous, and you're going to go hang out with him for a couple hours.
Mhm.
I was like, man, I'm thinking to myself, if you're saying it, Dad, it's got to be a drag. It's something I don't really want. I don't want to do, you know.
Yeah,
So he takes you down to the hotel, and Grant's there, man. He's this old dude, typical old dude. Hey, man, that's how he talks. He's like, yeah, man, so you play guitar? Yeah, baby, all right, let me see what you got. And I play some stuff and probably the pentatonic scale, or what we all know at 13.
yeah.
They go, yeah, that's cool, you can use that. And I remember him showing me this stuff, and I remember this deep level of so what in my mind. I don't care. That's not. Where's your distortion pedal? Where's your Fender Dual Showman with 215? This is okay, but I got to sit here because Dad's out the door. And I don't want to offend you. I'm going to be a nice kid. So I got all that absorbed in me in that one lesson. He died a couple of years later, but in my mind, about many years later, Dwayne, it just kicked back in like, wow, I know what that is. He showed that to me when I heard the records and was interested. I said, he showed me how to do that.
You
That's
know, I'm a Grant Green freak, man. I
And
love.
Grant, I mean, it was so surreal. And then one of my other great friends and teachers was Earl Clue. Earl lived in Detroit, so Earl like took me under his wing, and I used to just hang with Earl like all the time. And I never will forget the first Porsche I ever rode in was Earl's Porsche. Earl had a champagne colored 90. I never will forget a 911 because Earl had made a lot of money for many years. Back in the 70s, you go in an elevator, there was Earl Clue music playing.
Yeah,
You know, so he had the 911 Porsche. I never will forget it. So and it had a blah plunk radio. I never would had the blah plunk on the swivel back in the day with all the. I thought it was so hip. So one day he goes, "Hey man, I want you to listen to this," and he puts it on, and it's the studio tracks, unmixed tracks of the collaboration album with him and George Benson.
oh,
You know, and I'm listening to this. He goes, "Man, how you like this? So what do you think?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Man, you're killing it, but George Benson is really killing it." you know, and then he was playing with George, or just got through playing. And there was another guy in Detroit named Perry Hughes, who's a mentor of mine, who's a great. You look him up, Perry Hughes, great guitarist, and he was also instrumental in this. So all that Detroit stuff. That's how I really got into it.
man. And then so I'm assuming like after college, you just started gigging and playing with all kinds of people.
Yeah, well, what happened? The whole Berkeley thing. That's a very interesting thing back in the day because I went there like in the early '80s. And I fortunately got out of there with a piece of paper. But the whole Berkeley thing is more back then was more about the teachers really being great teachers and the scene in New York being able to. So when I left there, I went in during that little Young Lions period, late '80s, early '90s.
Clayton and all that.
Yeah, Black Codes, Winton, that kind of stuff. Winton was in Blakey's band. Branford was, so I'm a couple of years after Branford, and Kevin Eubanks and those cats. I remember seeing them and stuff and going to New York. So I went there, but I just, New York never really did it for me. It just never really, it was like too hard to live. Even though back then it wasn't nearly as hard as it is now, I was just like, man, I got to get on a train to do everything. I got to do, Well, a lot of great music though. Bernstein and them guys were playing at Augie's. It was Augie's. And they were so it was a lot going on, but it just didn't gel with my spirit. I said I want to live somewhere different.
Mm-hmm.
I want to live in Detroit, so I moved to Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
and so my young 20s going into my 30s, almost to 40, was spent in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of great music there. It was a great place to live. You could live great, you could grow, and there were some great, great musicians there. And that's where a lot of my gigs playing, because cats would come through. And that's how I get gigs. That's how I got the gig with Jimmy Smith. Um, I think Russell Malone told him about me, actually. Russell told him. And then Stanley Turrentine, and just a lot, Oliver, just a lot of stuff happened in Atlanta for me. What would happen, they'd come through and I'd do the gig there with them. And they'd be impressed and say, hey, man, well, I got 5 more gigs or 6 more gigs. Can you do this? And I find that it was a great experience for me that I was never in anybody's band for years,
Mm-hmm.
but I played enough gigs and spent enough time to know them intimately, um, and to learn from them, learn what to do and what not to do.
Right.
I mean, I even got a chance to play with James Brown, you know, and it was so unreal,
Yeah.
and just to be able to sit on a couch like this and talk to James Brown, who was very knowledgeable about Train and Miles, and he was very knowledgeable about all of that stuff. So Atlanta was a great growth thing for me. Then I just decided that I've had enough of this, and now so I'm going to move to LA. Are you going to move to LA? But the thing about moving to LA, I didn't come here to be put on. I'd already been playing and made a record or two and knew people. So I just came here with an open mind and an open heart. Whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
didn't come here. I didn't come here thirsty and hungry that I've got to make something happen. And we can talk about that later. I think a lot of people do that and they end up frustrated because I came here as a grown man. I was 40 when I moved to LA.
Yeah.
And
What was that around when you?
oh 03. Oh 03.
Yeah. See, I moved here in '01,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a few years out of college, and I had tried New York myself.
Yeah.
It only lasted a summer, and I knew it wasn't for me.
Right.
I grew up in Miami, going to the beach all the time. I mean, I was always very, very serious about music, but I like quality of life is important to me, and living in a box and living in the city all the time. I was going crazy. I just didn't like it. I love the music. The music was incredible.
Right. And you're very important. But see, and back then it was even, right now I know I would lose my mind, but back then it was beautiful because you could go to Bradley's. I never will forget the first time walking in Bradley's.
Yeah.
And I saw Art Blakey talking to Betty Carter and Cedar Walton, John Hicks, and Tommy Flanagan having a conversation, and just all these different people, man. I would see it, and you would sit there. First of all, you had nothing to say to them. I mean, there was nothing to say, I mean, because you know who they were, and they knew who you weren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But a lot of them were very accommodating, and they would check you out not about your playing, but about your personality. Um, how is this kid? Is he what's this kid's demeanor? What is he really about? So Bradley didn't have drums, most of the time, and
Right.
every now and then you would get a chance to play a little something with somebody, And I never will forget playing, man. I was playing. I think it might have been Clarence Penn or somebody. I was in there playing. At the end of the night, Cedar Walton walks over. He doesn't say anything to me the whole time. That chord is C7, not C major 7,
Oh man.
and walks away.
Wow.
So at that point, that's how they showed love. I'm like, okay, he knew, he had been listening. I messed it up, I guess, and he gave me this jewel
Yeah.
of what it is, and so those kind of lessons, were very important. So we learned. the guys in my age, I'm 57, we learned to be in the midst of those guys, but by no means were we their peers,
Sure.
and we kept that wall of distance. There's a great story that somebody, I wasn't privy to it, but somebody said Papa Joe Jones one time, this is really going back, was having a conversation with some other drummer of his peer of that age, and they were talking about some club owner or promoter or something that had done them wrong, and they were kind of going in on the guy, and they said it was some young cat that was sitting there, and he was sitting there in the midst at the table or nearby, and he was like, yeah, that guy. They said Papa Jones turned around to him and said, Papa Joe said, wait a minute, what has he ever done to you?
Mhm. Yeah.
Nothing. Well, zip it. You know, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So trying to get in through co-signing. They did, said, what has he ever done to you? Anything? So
Right.
you have nothing to say about this. You know what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
those kinds of lessons, I learned there in New York and also in Atlanta, and I still learn them. There's guys here now. When I'm around guys like Roy McCurdy and John B. Williams, or Farrell, because now I play with Farrell Sanders a lot, or Benny Maupin or whoever, Dr. Lonnie and George Benson. When I'm around those guys, I let them do the majority of the talking,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, because you just want to listen and learn, you know?
Yeah, or if I have a question that I think they can answer, I ask a question that's not just, the question is the basic. How was it like to play with so and so? Those kind of questions kind of rubs them, because for instance, when I'm with Farrell, a lot of times he'll be talking. I was in the car one day, and Coltrane came on, and he was just listening. He said, "Oh." He said, boy, that John. He called him John. Jimmy Heath used to call him John too. We
Right.
call him John. But to hear them say, it's like to hear Pharaoh say John is like me saying Dwayne.
Right. Because
You know what I'm saying? So their level of friendship was so much deeper that we're sitting here in awe. But I think Pharaoh said, man, that John loved to practice.
yeah,
So his relationship to him was beyond what we think the greatness of the music was.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You knew them as human beings and beyond the music.
Yeah. The good stuff and the bad stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone has both.
Yeah, man. And I think one of the balances that we need to do as musicians, especially during this COVID thing, I think this has been one of the greatest times ever. And if you allow me, I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tell me why.
Number one, if you notice, like the atmosphere outside, the air is cleaner. The air is cleaner. It seems like the universe. You haven't heard about global warming or the ozone layer in a while because it's kind of repairing itself
Sure.
to
Yeah.
a certain point. And hopefully we can keep the same kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Then it's also making us sit with ourselves, Dwayne. You got to this time you have to sit with yourself and find out what you're really about and who you truly are. There's nowhere there is nowhere to go, you know,
Mhm.
and if you can't be by yourself and don't like yourself, who else? Why would you think anybody else wants to be with you
Yeah.
if you can't take yourself?
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
I agree, man, because like a lot of people, not just musicians, but anybody, we're all running around. We're so busy with daily life and work and this and that. And when you're just home, like you said, you're in your own thoughts and you're thinking about life and a lot of musicians I'm talking to, they're practicing 5-6 hours a day, and I'm kind of not doing that. Like I'm just kind of living my life. I'm still practicing every day, but I'm just kind of enjoying going to the beach and just being relaxing and
Well, yeah, and doing what you can do. Because see, here's the thing: whoever you were prior to COVID,
Mhm.
you brought that over into COVID.
Right,
COVID didn't cause, people are crying, even on the financial side, people are like, man, I'm gonna, you probably if this little time period has sunk you financially, you
right,
were probably on the teeter-totting edge before COVID. You
right.
know, and
Yeah,
COVID just pulled the rug out from under you. You know what I'm saying? So use the time to say maybe I need to shore up myself in general next time in a better manner. Maybe I need to find another stream of income, something else that I can do besides music to make myself not have to go through this feeling. You know what I'm saying? Those that have spouses or, or the significant others. Now you got to sit there with them and deal with it and talk and see who you really are. Or if you're single by yourself, you got to ask yourself, do you like yourself?
Right.
You know, me, I love my home so much. If I'm not out anyway, I'm not doing anything different than COVID than I would have been doing normally. Of
Yeah.
course, my wife and I like to go to a lot of, we're foodies.
Yeah.
So the restaurant tip of going to the restaurant has been a little bit, shut down. But outside of that, I have everything else. The restaurants and the gym
Mhm.
or the gig were the only reason I would leave here anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm an online shopper if I need something, the gym. So I said, okay, the gym's not a great place to be right now. So I have a great home in the backyard. So I went and got all the equipment that I need. So now I have the gym right here. Don't have to go there. I can still, there's no excuse, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Yeah, the Bowflex weights and all I got all, and so they're all here, so just go do it. And I've learned to cook more here and enjoy the food, and
Yeah.
so I like being home anyway. I have the music, I have my guitars, and that's my lifestyle anyway, and I prepared myself financially so this wouldn't sink me, so I'm not, I have compassion for those that are suffering,
Right.
but I think they're suffering. If they really look at it and get honest, they would have to say what was happening the day before they said we were locked down.
Yeah, that's true because a lot of people, especially in America, I mean, a lot of people just live beyond their means. They can't
Hmm.
save money. They're in terrible credit card debt.
Yeah.
Sometimes, it's beyond their control that they get in these situations. But other people, they're driving cars they shouldn't be driving,
Hmm.
places that they probably can't really afford. So I think
Right.
it's going to reset a lot of people and say, okay, I need to be different with my life now.
Yeah, or the honesty of truth of their heart of who they really are. Even in the musician thing, like I've seen some people on Facebook. I don't feel like practicing because what am I practicing for?
It's so
So so that tells me something right then and there that if you're saying that music is a means to an end for you, there's no true love of it. See, you and I would play for free and love playing,
yeah,
but if you say that, I'm tempted to think that you might just be doing it. You've dug a hole for yourself with an instrument, and and now you have no, and because I guess I had years ago a great guy from San Diego, God rest his soul, one of the greatest musicians, Daniel Jackson. Um, he was like the Coltrane of San Diego.
wow,
He played piano and saxophone. He was that guy in San Diego that everybody knew his level was above, And
yeah,
he asked me one time, he asked me and Gilbert he said Castellano and Kevin Canner might have been there and maybe Gerald Clayton. He
yeah,
said, he said, why do you all even play music? What's your reason? He said, don't answer it. And whatever that reason is, you got to live with that,
mm,
you know?
yeah,
So if you're playing jazz, especially to be rich, you've probably made a bad decision, and you
right,
might want to go get on the touring circuit or one of the things that's more lucrative
right,
that does that. You know what I'm saying? Jim Hall told me one time that the reward is being able to do it.
hmm yeah,
How many guys do you know that come to you for lessons that are like lawyers, doctors, airline pilots, all kinds of stuff? They have all the resources, but they want to play guitar.
yeah.
You know,
I've always had students like that.
and they so the guitar, whatever. I've had guys go out and buy the exact same gear that I, like the L5 and the whatever amp and whatever,
Yeah,
and then bring it over to my house and say, okay, set it like yours,
uh, that's
and then I get pissed off because it wouldn't sound like it. You know what I'm saying?
wrong with you.
So our gift is that we're able to do it. That's the reward. We've been blessed to do something. Now, in doing it, we have the ability to share something with everybody else. Okay,
Yeah,
and that's where I think jazz musicians, Dwayne, we get a little self-centered sometimes. There are no gigs in the clubs. First of all, they don't owe us anything. The
right,
guy with the club decided that he was going to put a stake in the ground, get a business license and a liquor license, and figure out a way to take care of himself and his family and possibly leave a legacy. It
Right.
wasn't about us playing all the things you are every Friday night.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't his main thing. That's the byproduct of it. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you were dependent on that guy having his door open so you could go in there and play all the things you are, then you got to reevaluate what it's all about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because you can still play all the things you are anywhere. But your sustainability of your life can't be wrapped up in that because you'll just be running around like on a hamster wheel.
Yeah. And that's a lot of musicians don't get that. I mean, we're all trying to figure it out. I have no idea what's going to happen after the COVID. Part of me fears, like, everything's going online right now, and people are performing online and this and that, and part of me thinks, well, maybe that's the new way it's going to be. And the other part of me hates that because I love being out and seeing music live and being in a room with people. And that might go away, or I don't know if it'll go away, but a lot of places are probably going to close.
I don't think it'll go away. I think it'll be more special
Mm.
when you do go do it. I thought about this. I mean, now let's think about this for a minute. Let's go back in history. Let's go back to the 20th century. From 1920 to about 1940, it was all on the radio. You couldn't see anybody.
Right.
Tonight we got Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie down here, folks, and people would tune in and put their ear to the radio, and and we got Joe DiMaggio, and or Joe, the boxer. They're going to be fighting, and people would tune in to the fight, and they would plan their lives around the radio broadcast. They didn't want to miss it.
Right.
They'd all be around one home. They'd be listening. Who's got the best radio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then television came out in the movies. Okay, so television gave them another option.
Hmm.
You know, and for a minute, let's not forget that there was a recording ban, so there was no recording coming out. You had to either listen to old records or there were no new ones for a while.
Yeah.
So we're just going through a phase in which I know as humans we'll figure it out. So to me, the online thing is nothing more than it's just a better version of the radio.
Yeah.
And I think we and those of us born later, we have a tendency to be a little bit spoiled. Our grandparents listened to the radio. So now we have a radio where you can see me. This is basically a radio where you can see me. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know, and if it matters because we have so much access to everything now, seeing a live concert will really mean something.
I agree. I think a lot of us took it for granted. I was talking about this with another guy. I was listening to a Peter Bernstein interview, and he was talking about how, he looks back and he says, "I had it made. I was playing with the best musicians in the world, touring the world, and I didn't realize how good I had it."
Right.
And it's going to be like you said. I think when we all go back, it's going to be special. I think maybe we'll be rusty a little bit, but it'll mean more though. So
Right.
I think you're right with that.
Well, the audience will be really, super appreciative, but we should have been honoring that. And I tell people, and I've talked to Peter about this. Me and Peter discussed this extensively.
Yeah.
Um, so a guy gets up one day, maybe on Wednesday,
Mhm.
and he's going to work. He works at the paper place where they make paper or something, or he's an attorney or whatever. It doesn't matter the job, and and say he's got a wife and she's a nurse at the so and so. And they say, you know what? Friday's our anniversary. Oh, what are we gonna do? I don't know. Let's go out and let's go hear some music.
Mhm.
So the stars align, and now they're in front of us.
Mhm.
Okay. Now it's our responsibility to honor the fact that they paid their money, which they'll never get back.
Mhm.
Not that money.
Right.
They've invested in this experience in this moment.
Mhm.
And then they've also given up some time that they never will get back.
Mhm.
They said, okay, I'm going to give you 2 hours of my time and $50 of my money.
Mhm.
So we need to honor that. You know what I'm saying? So,
Sure.
when we're there, our responsibility is to provide an offering for them that shows our gratitude and appreciation for them giving up time of their lives
Yeah.
that they'll never get that time back again. So
Mhm.
it's not about us and and they're not listening to me and why and they're dumb because they don't know what I'm doing and it's that's not I've never gotten into that. One of the greatest quotes, Kenny Burrell, who's a mentor of mine also, one time we were talking about people talking in the club. He says, well, if they're talking, check out what it is you're doing.
Mm. Why are they talking, right?
Check out what it is you're doing. He said because he said I don't think anybody was talking when Wes was playing.
That's right. That's right.
Or so and some folks were talking. I've heard records of people talking, but the thing is, the main thing is that we can't be so self-centered, man. About I mean, we're just not special.
Mhm.
Musicians are not. I mean, we're not special in the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have a skill and a talent that's been given to us, but we don't. We shouldn't be blessed. We shouldn't feel any more special than Joe the plumber,
Hmm.
who does really a more major service on a daily basis than we do.
Oh yeah, your toilet stopped up. You don't care about jazz musicians as
Right.
much.
Your toilet style, you could care less about D minor seven.
Right,
You
right.
know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
most times, folks don't know what D minor seven is anyway.
right.
And don't care. You and I care, and we really don't care that much about what D minor seven is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So the truth is, Dwayne, nobody really cares, and
Hmm.
none of it matters anyway.
Right.
Not it just at the end of the day. I mean, think about all the great jazz musicians that are now in the ground, and we cry, "Oh, they were great, they were good, so and so," but they're gone, and it just doesn't matter. If you and I stop playing tomorrow, maybe our wives, our parents, and a few friends say, "Oh man, you stopped playing guitar?"
Yeah, that would be it.
Oh, and they go, "Why?" I said, "Well, oh, okay, well," and that would be the end of it, and nobody else would care.
Right,
But we act like the world revolves around us.
right. Yeah, and that as you get older, you realize that more and more because when you're younger and you see a lot of younger cats, sometimes you get the feeling that they think that like what they're doing is so important. Like when you go to a club and someone's cold to you and they're vibing you or something, and you're like, man, really? Is you
But
think
yeah,
you're
well,
that great or whatever it is, or
that's a whole new phenomena,
uh-huh.
the so-called vibing phenomena.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
because and it comes from I think the younger generation not being able to socially relate anyway. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
The social skill level because of the internet interaction, the face to face situation. I remember, like in New York and growing up, if a cat didn't like you, you knew it, and it wasn't a big deal to go around. It wasn't no vibe. You just knew it, or he might say something.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And or you will confront the guy and say, "Hey, man, have I done something to you?"
Mhm.
Because every time I come around here, no, and the cat might say, well, no, man, I'm just, that's just, I didn't, no, it's cool, you know, or the guy might give you an answer,
Yeah,
you know, but
yeah,
see, lack of confrontation has caused people not to want to hear the answer, and then avoid the whole thing. I'm not going down there because they vibe me,
right, right. Yeah, it's weird.
which means you're really not about music anyway.
Yeah,
You're about validation. You want them to all say, "Hey, you're here. Great.
yeah,
You're wonderful. Yeah, man. Yeah." You need yeah mans all the time.
yeah,
The
exactly.
yeah man, which a lot of times Dwayne is just as jive as anything. Because what does yeah man really mean? Somebody plays something, you go yeah man. What does that mean?
Yeah,
Or because if I hear them say, Dwayne, I love that chord melody you played, man, or that line you played. What if a cat comes off a stage nowadays and they're going yeah man? That doesn't mean that's just the gratuitous. I really think you suck.
well, what I notice a lot, especially at jams, I don't go to a lot of jams, but you'll play, and then you'll hear another guy play, and then like I'll go up to a guy and say, "Hey, I really like the way you play, man. He's a great job." And they heard you play, and they're like, "Oh, thanks." It's like okay, like I don't really care that they didn't, say they like my playing, but the fact that they couldn't say
Engage.
anything. Yeah, it's like what's wrong with you, man? I'm just
You know,
you get
or or or, or you couldn't be honest. or be honest about what he may have thought. Like
Right.
if you said that, he says, "Yeah, man, I heard you, and I'd like to like tell you something about something I think that might help you."
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Engage you in the conversation, because it could be something legitimate,
Sure.
but cats are so weird nowadays, because it's become a competitive thing. I was thinking, Dwayne, at one point in history, we'll say the 50s through the 70s,
Hmm.
Herb Ellis, Tal Farlow, Jim Hall, Wes Montgomery, Grant Green, Kenny Burrell, Barney Kessel, Jimmy Rainey, list goes on. They were all playing at the same time. They all had gigs and they were all playing.
Right.
I don't really think they were all, because Joe Pad, I mean, just the list goes on, not to mention countless local cats all around the country. So I don't think people were really bugging out and tripping on the competitive thing about who sound. And if you think about it, everybody I just mentioned, they all sounded different.
Yeah. Yeah.
They all had you knew it was them,
Right.
you know, and they had, I heard a joke one time. Somebody told me who knew Wes very carefully. He said one time Wes was on some kind of show or something going on, and he was playing, and he kept seeing these people looking around a wall, looking around a corner like that, like.
Yeah.
He said he kept saying, "Who is that? Who keeps doing that?" And it was Herb Ellis and somebody else.
They were there looking, or they were behind the wall.
They were behind the wall looking around with it, but they didn't want him to see them.
Oh.
He's like, "Hey, isn't that Barney over there?" You
Oh
know what I'm saying?
man.
So, but it was still a loving thing. They were there to check him out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what you're doing here is very important, because this is love. This is love, man.
I
This
do
is,
it that way.
yeah. I mean, because there's enough for everybody. There's no threat.
Right.
You know, I mean, and what's your reason for playing music? Competition is not my thing, man. I have something to say that I want to give to people.
Yeah. And I've met a lot of all kinds of musicians. And when I've met the top guys, the best of the best, they're usually the nicest.
Yeah, because there's nothing to be unnice about, and
Mhm.
there's also a balance in my life. Your life, man. You
Mhm.
know, music is not the end of my who I am as a person. If the guitar is disappearing, I'm still going to be Jacques. You're still going to be Dwayne, and we'll figure out something else to do if we had to.
Right. Mhm.
Like drink that good beer there. That's a good one.
I feel bad I'm the only one drinking,
Well,
but
no, that's okay. I don't worry. I get mine in.
I
I,
almost never drink beer, but I'm not a day drinker. I usually do these at night, but since I was going out of town, we ran out of time. But anyway,
I'm
it's
a bourbon and wine man. So, but
perfect time.
I haven't had any dinner yet, so I'll just wait.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that's the other reason why I'm doing this, because like I'm playing guitar every day, so that's not a problem. But I miss the camaraderie. That's what I miss
Yeah.
about doing this. And I podcasts are just this not new, but I listen to podcasts all the time, and some of my favorite ones are the ones that are just loose. It's not really an interview. It's just kind of like
Right.
a game. It goes where it goes.
It's a beautiful thing, man. And you should just archive these and talk to cats, and just because you're a good person. So you can tell if a person's a good person. When I first met you at the partner room, first of all, when I heard you play, I knew you were a good person.
Oh,
See, playing.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes you can hear something that's killing,
mm-hmm,
as they say, but when I hear it, I'll say that's not a nice guy. Okay, and it can be really, really killing. You know what I'm saying?
sure.
Or it could be something that's like not. Somebody could be like not all the way up to par
Mm-hmm,
and need some work on some things. I
mm-hmm,
say, man, but that's an honest, nice guy,
yeah,
because you can play a lie as well as tell a lie.
sure.
And so we have a lot of people nowadays playing lies. Your personality shouldn't be name a musicians whose personality was different from how they sounded. You can't do it.
It's true.
That was Miles was Miles.
Yeah,
Train was Train.
yeah, yeah. Miles was a very complicated kind of guy. He had his goods and bads, but his
Right.
showed that he had a very what's the word I'm looking for?
Dichotomous. He was a he was a paradox.
Yeah,
Where you could have this most beautiful thing, and then turn around and cuss you out.
yeah,
but it was still honesty. You see
Yeah,
what I'm saying? You
so
know, yeah, yeah. Kenny Burrell, he's the sweetest, he's warm. Yeah, Jacques. And when you hear that, when he plays those big, fat, warm chords,
yeah,
you hear George Benson, who I'm blessed to hang around a lot, but not recently because of COVID. But I've stayed at his house and hung out for weekends and weekends, and he actually loves the guitar. He absolutely loves to play guitar.
yeah.
And to be honest, there's nobody alive
Hmm.
that plays more guitar than George Benson. Like in our lifetime of span right now,
Yeah,
of the way we like to hear the music played,
yeah.
there's nobody. And I want all your listeners to know there's nobody plays more than George Benson.
I tell you, man, he is a freak of nature. I watched. I was lucky to see him a couple times, but I don't know if you've seen his. He did like a lesson video series
Mhm.
a few years ago where he's in
I've
his
seen
house.
that. I've seen that, and I've been in front of him doing that to me in
Yeah,
front of my. I mean, we've sat there for 3 hours, and I've
yeah,
seen it, and then he'll stop and say, "Wait, what's that you doing? What's
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah,
Show me that again."
yeah.
Or his joke is, "Brother, don't show it to me because I'm gonna steal it now." You know what I'm saying? And his thing is, and he told me one time, he said, "Man, I'm just like all the rest of you guys." I'm like, "George, no, you're not.
No.
I know what you're saying, but there's something else about you that was given to you from the Creator
Yeah,
that's not like everybody else."
yeah.
And you hear, "Well, practice." I said, "No, I can practice for 8 or 9 or 2. We could all practice. It's not going to be like that." You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if practice makes you the genius you are, we'd all be doing it. You
Yes.
know, you know what I'm saying?
No, it's a
There's
gift. It's a gift. And he has a joy in his playing. Just like when you hear Stevie Wonder, it's just
right,
all joy.
right,
You
exactly.
hear Stevie Wonder and you just feel better.
Yeah,
You know?
immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. You're absolutely right. And that's what I try to emit through my music, man. Grant had joy. You hear Grant, you know, so, and then there's a lot of other music. I like Bruno Mars, man. That's joyful music, man.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know, it's joyful. Certain Beyonce cuts,
yeah.
it's joyful. Earth, Wind and Fire,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm just hoping, and I think a lot of times the reason that our music, and we call this jazz music, is so underappreciated is because people come out, man, and the bandstand looks like a morgue. You
Yeah.
know,
No joy.
there's no joy. There's stress and tension. Guys are reading this. Me and Bruce Foreman used to hang out a lot for breakfast. We could go play. He says they're playing music that's hard to play and hard to listen to.
Yes. Well,
You
yeah, you hear some of these, I think it's a younger kind of a thing, but like every tune's either really, really fast or really, really difficult. There's always it's like you just play can't swing like a nice medium tempo and just make me feel good for a little bit. It's like
George said that. He said George said, Jacques, the reason I got all these chops and stuff together. He said because Grant. He said I used to be somewhere. He said Grant came on your gig, man. And Grant got right about there. You were done. Okay, all
yeah.
right. He said, man, Grant would get you every time. So he said, I started playing, you
Did you
know.
see that documentary about him on YouTube?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't think it was a great documentary per se. I would love to see someone do something. I think it was more about his son's dealing with
Yeah,
grief.
it was. It was. I knew. See the thing that's I knew him. That's Grant. Grant. The actual Grant. The Grant that plays guitar is really. His name is really Greg.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, but he uses Grant Green Jr.
yeah,
But that guy was the guy in the video is really Grant Green Jr.
okay,
And his ex-wife Sharni Andrews Green wrote,
yeah,
wrote a book years ago. So that documentary was kind of loosely based on the biography, on the autobiography, on the
yeah.
biography.
And he was a guy that when I first got into jazz guitar, I mean, I got into all the greats, Wes and Joe Pass and Kenny Burrell, and I didn't know much about Grant Green because when I was younger, he wasn't that talked about. People didn't talk
Right.
about Grant Green. And then one of my friends had his record, His Majesty's King Funk, and
Great record, man. One of the best records.
yeah, so I heard that, and it was so different than a lot of the other stuff I was listening to. And then as the years have gone by, the way I mostly practice nowadays is I just play the records. That's what I
Hmm.
do most of the time, and I'll learn new tunes that way. And I keep coming back to Grant Green's records, not necessarily because he's my favorite guitar player, even though he's in probably my top five
Right,
or 10, but his rhythm sections too, all that stuff with Elvin and McCoy,
right, right.
like
Larry Young.
records, yeah, Larry Young. I mean, those records are so fun to play to because they grew, and Grant just grooved so hard. And when I teach my students to get into jazz guitar, I'll often show them Grant solos because a lot of his solos are doable. I mean, not saying it's
Right.
level, but they're not like Wes, where I go,
Hmm.
that's Wes is impossible.
And some of that stuff on Grant is so tricky too because it sounds easy. Some of that stuff Grant was doing, but it's really not. You know.
He's behind the beat a lot, which is
Yeah, and then he got some weird fingerings on some stuff that's really, but
yeah.
um, but it was like you said, it's joyous and accessible, and it was well intended. One thing I've never done. I was talking to Rodney Jones about this, and Russell, and a couple other because those are all. Because I'm in that. That's my peer line. Russell, Rodney, Bobby Broom, Peter. We're all in the same.
Yeah.
We're all in that same. So we all have a lot of conversations. And the thing is, most of us have never transcribed a whole solo of anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never, I see these kids doing it online, and maybe it's because I don't have the patience, but I don't have the necessity. Well, I have transcribed a lick,
Hmm.
you know, but
Yeah.
but most times I'm trying to not even get the notes down. I'm trying to get the spirit of why he did that there and what was going on
Yes.
around him. I'm not so concerned because I don't want to repeat somebody else's speech. I'll never have an opportunity to say the Gettysburg Address as if it's my own.
Right. Yeah, and I did a lot of transcribing when I was young, and I don't do it anymore for the same reason. Like, I feel like I got to a certain point where I'm like, okay, this is me. This is the way I play, and it is what it is.
Wow, Dwayne, and that's once you reach that spot, brother,
Yeah.
you are at a good point. That's the point that people should strive to get to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll be chasing their tail
Right.
after everything that they hear that is new or different. And
Right.
it's so funny. That's why I don't ever play for musicians
Hmm.
because musicians generally, and this is going to sound funny, but when musicians normally, unless they really got a loving, compassionate heart,
Hmm.
they're hoping you sound worse than they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever their mediocre level might be, as long as you can get under that,
Yeah.
they're fine. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You
Yeah.
know, their worst thing is when they hear somebody that sounds better than them. That's a really hard thing for them to deal with, to have somebody sound better than them, who might be younger or not as well schooled or whatever. And now they got a real problem on how to deal with that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think the good thing to deal with that is to be joyous about it, happy, man. Hell yeah, that cat is getting down.
Yeah.
Something to learn there.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And it's just like because there always will be some new young cats that come up playing some shit. Because some of the younger cats they're playing some vocabulary now, and I don't even know what it is.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
understand what it is, and it's cool. But so do I have to abandon who I am to go chase that, or do I just be who I am and then just say that's cool for them, and I do what I do, and that's it. You know?
Self-acceptance and self-love, accepting yourself is so important of who you are.
Yeah.
Who you are, you like the foods you like, you pick the woman that you like,
Yeah.
so and so and you're going to play the way you like to. Now, the challenge I would tell somebody after they get to the point that we're at with that, also deal with the things that you don't like about yourself and work on those are the things you work on.
Yeah.
There's things about ourselves, our playing that we don't like, and one good way to do it is get the old recorder out on the gig and listen to it, and say, okay, That was him. That's why I've been doing all these videos. You've seen all this live streaming, and,
Yeah.
and we'll all go back and I'll be sitting there saying, "Oh man, I'm not going to ever do that again." And this video say, "Well, man, I like that." I'm saying, "Okay, I'm glad you did, but I'm not doing that again. I don't want to do that again."
Yeah.
And then he'll turn around and say, "Man, I couldn't get those fours out. I was thinking something and I got stuck." This is Marvin Smitty Smith, one of the greatest drummers. He's like, I couldn't get it out. I got a shed. You know, so the being honest with oneself is so important. Loving oneself in honesty is how I like to say it. Love yourself in honesty.
Yeah, yeah, and recording yourself, man. I got into recording a lot of gigs the last couple years, and I tell you, I mean, it used to be painful because I'd hear it and go, "Oh God, it's so bad." But I get to eventually get over that. But now I'm at the point where I'm not saying I like what I play all the time, but there'll be things that I hear and I'm like, man, that's something you got to work on more because there's something there.
Right.
I don't hear anyone doing that. You got to go down that road more.
And one thing I would recommend is that, and I do what I call intentional playing. If you listen to me, I mean to play what I play. Now I'm not trying to play something that I didn't want to play, or I'm not just moving my fingers hoping that something hip comes out.
Right.
I'm also not sitting there thinking, am I valid? Is this jazz? Is this the right? I'm not, because you cannot be creative and self-conscious at the same time. Our minds don't split like that. Our mind's going to say, okay, Dwayne, do you want to be creative now, or do you want to be self-conscious about what Jacques thinking looking at you?
Right.
You decide. I'll do either one.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
I think it's a confidence thing too. Like you gotta be up there no matter who's in the audience. Because I remember, there'd be a good guitar player there, and when I was younger, I'd go, I'm gonna impress this guy, and I would always play like shit when I did that.
Right.
Always.
Right.
And then eventually, I was like, I don't really care about that guy. I'm gonna do my thing. And then whenever I would do that, I'd play better. I'd say,
Here's a story for you how my friendship with George Benson started.
uh,
So I was playing in Atlanta, and I was on stage one night, and it was like a place kind of like the Parker Room, but a little bit bigger, and it was the place to be, and everybody was in there, and we had 3 days a week in this joint. So this was my house, you know what I'm saying? We had an announcer, ladies and gentlemen, the Jacques Lesure song, and I'm up there, and I'm playing, and I'm doing these Benson double stop octave, all that kind of stuff. So the bouncer walks up, the doorman. He says, "Hey man, he's just a cat, the bouncer. Hey man, it's a cat over here, man." He said he's a guitar player, man, and he want to talk to you. He wants to play, and I'm like, "Who is this?" Right? Because I'm killing it. What are you talking about? Who's this interrupting me? And I looked up, and it was George.
oh my god.
Okay, all right. So at this time, he walks up. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have," and now the stage was set up. It was a little raised above, like where the tables were, kind of like trying to think, are there any clubs like this in LA? Maybe imagine if the Baked Potato had a raised stage and there were tables right down there,
Okay.
or kind of like the Lighthouse, but not as tall.
Okay.
The stage was a little shorter. The tables right there where actually somebody could put their hand on the stage.
Okay. Yeah.
So with that in mind, there were tables all around this half moon stage. So there was nowhere for me to go right then and there.
Yeah.
He kind of came up through the crowd. So I had to stand there and take the ass whooping of Cherokee that he gave me on my own guitar.
So he just took your guitar and played it.
I mean, yeah, he didn't have his guitar. I just gave him mine.
Yeah.
And he sounded identical like he always sounds,
Right.
and I had to stand there and take the ass whooping, I had to stand there and take it. So, and I was
Wow.
like, and we got over, he gave me a big hug. He said, "Man, you can play." He told the audience, "This is a good dude here." And that's how our friendship started. And he gave me his phone number, and we were like, after that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then one time I was in New York, and he came in there. He was in New York for something. Him and I think maybe Mark Whitfield and all these guys I'm playing, they all come and sit right on the front.
Oh man.
So once I've been in places where I didn't know people was, man, Joe Sample is back there or Herbie's back, and you had no idea. You've already played a set. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, what in the? So the rule is go in there with honesty and intention
Yeah,
because you don't know who is in there. You also don't know when it's going to be your absolute last time.
that's right. Yeah, every gig could be your last, man. You can get killed on the way home.
Right, right, or fall or drop out. You know what I'm saying? So we should have really good intent when we're playing. We should have the right intention, the right spirit. You don't want to leave a club pissed off. You don't want to leave. You don't want, and that's why the bandstand is so important to me. The bandstand, the people that I play with, it's not just them being good. They got to be good people, man, and great people. Because to me, playing music is like letting a cat use your toothbrush. I mean, you got to really trust this cat, man.
Yeah,
You got to really, and Elvin said that. They asked Elvin one time. They said, Elvin, how did you and Train and McCoy and all you all play with that intensity and that camaraderie? Elvin said, you got to be ready to die with a
wow. Yeah, man, that's right.
motherfucker.
You gotta love the people you play with, man, because there's more to it than just the music. Especially if you go on tour. I mean, you're gonna live with these people.
I love hearing you play like with Will Lyle. You play with Will before. How'd you play with Will before on bass?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love Will, man. He's the
y-
greatest.
yeah, because his spirit is, but Will was raised by, well, raised, but mentored by one of my close friends, Ralph Peterson.
Yeah,
The great drummer. So Will has that sensibility of no BS with the music,
yes.
you know, and it's about the music. And he's a nice guy, and he's really fortunate now because now he's going to be studying with Ron Carter.
Yeah, man. He's sky's the limit for that guy because he has the whole package. He's got a great attitude. He's a sweet guy.
Yeah,
He's dedicated. He works hard. Every time, so many young guys I play with now, you call a tune, they're just in their phone the whole time. I'm like, man, learn some tunes, dude. And he just knows all of them. He knows more than I do.
man, I've seen people, man, back in the day. When we had to really carry the whole real book around, guys that have bags of real books. I
Yeah,
never forget. I was at a session one time, and Russell was at the session, and some guy was playing, and Russell went up to the guy and closed the book in the middle of the tune, and the guy wanted to fight Russell after that. He really wanted to fight. But first of all, the real book is wrong a lot of the
it
times.
is. Yeah.
I remember when I was at Berkeley, the guy that made the book was like outside in the car, like it was drugs. And so the guy would be like, somebody say, "Hey man, he's out there. Who's out there?
I
He's
remember.
out there.
Yeah.
He's out. Oh, is he, man? He's
Yeah.
the real.
You got the money?
Yeah, yeah. You got give me the money and then I'll go get it. You know what I'm saying? You know, I don't want him to see you. I mean, it was ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then he'd have like the extra thing would be like the corrections.
Yeah.
You know, you know. You got the corrections, and it was just like the most ridiculous thing in the world, and there, and Massimo's iReal is a great learning tool.
Yeah. It is.
But it's not supposed to be. I mean, what other profession does that? When you go get a haircut and your beard trim and all that, you don't want the guy to get his barber school 101 book out. All right, how to trim a goatee.
No, you got to know it.
Or the doctor, or you go to the doctor or the dentist. Okay, how to do a root canal on the left molar.
Right.
You
I
know,
do that again.
Yeah, right. Wait, I got it right here. Don't worry about it. You know, you know. So
Yeah, that's true, man. I talk to guys. I go, man, you should learn some tunes. First of all, whenever I talk to young guys and I make a comment, they'll look at me like I'm crazy. And I go, man, I've been doing this longer than you. Maybe you should listen to me. I know a lot
right,
of things. I'm not an expert, but
right.
doing
But
this.
you are an expert.
Well, I don't
You
know.
know,
But I'm saying I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, and
right,
if I make a suggestion, maybe you should listen. And I'll say,
right. Because yeah, and that's a generational thing. Because as much as like I tell you the Grant story, I still listened.
sure,
You know what I'm saying? what cats don't realize is that when you're reading music, this is why, and I can read music. I'm not the greatest reader, but I can read some music.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, when you're reading some music, you can't be creating any music because you're really looking. You're really if you even if it's just chord charts, you're not thinking the song. You're thinking E half diminished
Yes.
and where that is on the guitar versus what that is to the song.
Right. You want to internalize it.
Right, right, and then play something different than E half diminished because E half diminished is three different things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when guys are comping, I can tell like the basic average comper because he keeps playing that E diminished every time he comes to that. That's what he does. You know what
Incredible.
I'm saying? And I'm like, okay, so he's learned it from the real book.
Yeah.
And this is jam session, and we played 50 choruses, and he's played E half diminished every time. It
Yeah.
never occurred to him that that was C7,
Yeah. Right.
or if it's C7, maybe you should play G minor 7 now and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Play G minor 7 there instead. Well, or that worked. How about B flat major 6 might work.
Yeah.
And really explore the guitar versus sitting there just dun 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 dun, dun and that's jazz. And then all the girls get up and leave because that's boring.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
I was at a jam session here, and we won't say any names. It's a jam session, and they were playing, and like a whole crew of like bachelorettes came in for like somebody's bachelorette party.
Huh.
And these guys, and first of all, and I was by myself. I was had a drink, and I was just watching. I said, I'm going to see how this all plays out.
Yeah.
First of all, these guys they didn't know how to engage these girls. Not one of the guys, leader or anything, said anything to them. The girls were in another little part by themselves. They could still see the band. And I was like, okay, first mistake. They should have engaged these girls. You know what I'm saying? You obviously see they got tiaras on. Somebody's getting married. Stop playing inner urge for a moment and engage them. Okay, all right, right, and engage them. Okay, engage them. They didn't do it. And then one of the girls asked, "Do you all know it was some like pop song or something?" And rather than say no or try to work it out, they got offended. Oh, we're playing jazz here. And the girls are like a little taken aback, like, why is he acting like that? Because to those girls, that's a band.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. We're in a club drinking, having a good time, and there's a band here.
Right.
We're not thinking that there's three guys that went to see sung and there's and all this kind of stuff. There's just a band over here, and at the other club we went to where there was a band, those guys were cool. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So they stayed there about 10 minutes and left.
Yeah.
About eight girls, which translated to about in my book. If I'm an owner, that's about 3 bottles of wine or more, or that's eight mojitos. So that's $80 going out the door that I could have made, but you guys still want your money at the end of the night.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got to really learn those things, man, and learn what it's truly about,
Yeah.
and listen and get our heads out of real books and out of because it's not about that. That's not what it's about at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I always like learning tunes off of records because I actually memorize them quicker that way.
Of course you do, and then also we have to think in mind either the record or the original sheet music. The old sheet music with little dots of the guitar with the chords the chords that we say we already know. Check those chords out. The little every now and then you'll say, "I didn't know that one." You know what I'm saying. And also we have to keep in mind that when the guy wrote "You Are the Promises of Springtime," he was writing all the things you are. He wasn't thinking about me killing it on a solo on that. He, he was writing a song about all the things. The song is all the things you are. So
Right.
these kids need to learn the lyrics and what the song is about,
Yes.
and not just even vocalists, man. When they come up with the "My Funny Valentine," anybody ever really listen to that song? What the person is actually saying? They say your looks are laughable, unphotographable. That's not necessarily a compliment.
Right. Right.
Okay, so but you're my favorite work of art. You know what I'm saying? So when a singer is singing that, they need to internalize what is the song really about.
Yeah. Yeah, the meaning and the vibe of the tune for sure.
Right. And sometimes maybe you shouldn't sing a song that's not available to you,
Hmm.
not not part of your personality.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Never thought of it that way. That's definitely a different way to look at
Yeah. I mean, if the song doesn't relate, you can't relate to it. You just singing a song that has nothing to do. You know, you know. For instance, "Good Morning Heartache." Billy wrote that because of drug addiction.
it. Right.
She woke up and she's still addicted.
Yeah.
It's not just a happy-go-lucky song.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't understand where she's coming from, maybe it's not appropriate. Well, it's like if someone's singing "Strange Fruit" and they don't know what it's about. It's like, well, you
Exactly,
know what that's
exactly.
about. You're wearing.
And that's a whole nother story about musicians and racial tensions and being honest about that stuff. I mean, cats got to be honest about that too. This music was started by folks that looked like me, who were my ancestors. Who were brilliant.
Right.
And part of the problem is being able to deal with that brilliance and what happened to them as they were being brilliant. And I
Mhm.
don't think anybody's ever thought about that. That Duke Ellington couldn't go in the front door of some places.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, we don't see that. We,
Yeah.
we don't imagine. We can't really imagine what it must have been like that night to see Miles get beat bloody in front of the place he was playing at.
Yeah.
We see the pictures and it's kind of like surreal, kind of a mythological that happened.
Mhm.
But to be in that spirit of Bird and those guys during that abject Jim Crow time when they couldn't go in front doors and got to eat in the kitchen and just all kinds of stuff going on. We don't really, and not just them, things that were happening to their family members and hearing about a guy getting lynched and how that might affect their psyche when they had to go to a gig, get a phone call. We found your cousin swinging from a tree, but now you got to go play a gig, and you know, we don't think about how the trauma of all this stuff coming together, and
Right.
then this beautiful music come out. Now we're reducing it down to our iPhones.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine, if Picasso showed up to a place and not being able to walk through the front door, you would think, how could that even happen? But
Right,
Ellington was Picasso.
right,
He was the
right,
same level of greatness, and yet, the people, they just didn't even have any idea. They didn't even register in their mind that they're dealing with a brilliant. I mean, it shouldn't even matter that they were brilliant or not brilliant, really. But you know what I mean? Like
right. Exactly, exactly.
they're human.
You,
But
you know, Bird and these people, man. I mean, they had to deal with all of that stuff. At the same time making the music. So a lot of times when I see their so-called drug addiction, I think about a lot of that was coping mechanisms.
sure,
You
dealing
know,
with pain.
right? I mean, what else were they going to do?
Right. Yeah.
You know, you know,
And it's hard. I mean, it's hard for us in this day and age to be able to understand that. Although there's a lot of crazy shit going on now, so
right,
who the hell knows?
right, right. Well, the key for me is that I don't deflect or deny it, but I rise above it.
Right. Right.
I have a way of rising above it. I'm not denying it. It exists. I know it exists, but I know that the greater issue is humans in general.
Right. Right.
Humans in general. Yes, there is a racist thing in this country,
Mhm.
but man has been doing things to each other of the same race for ages as human beings. So we need to evolve as humans better. You
Yes.
know, when I think about the Irish, who was it? It was one group of them, the Catholics and the Protestants,
Hmm.
for years fighting each other,
Right. Right.
or or the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Hmm.
They look alike. You know what I'm saying? Or certain parts of Africa. So yes, this is a real deal, and Black lives do matter.
Hmm.
But however, we got to look at the humans. We got to get over and understand where all this pain. I mean, because I have a lot of compassion because especially for like white supremacists. I'm like, how do you get to that level? How do you get in your life where you're so miserable, where that's an active part of your psyche? you
Sure.
know,
I think it's sure.
I would hate to live. You go to sleep at night and you wake up with that in the morning.
Yeah.
That's got to be kind of rough. I mean, I feel sorry for those people who, man, that's a lot to carry around with you all your life.
Have you
Hate.
heard about this? I'm probably gonna get the guy's name wrong. Daryl Dobson. You know who he is?
No.
He's a. I saw him on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's a black musician who turned about 250 KKK members out. Turned them out.
Now I heard about a guy doing that. I heard about doing that, but he was a musician.
Yeah, he was a musician. And what happened was he was playing in some bar somewhere, and he was playing like I think he was playing early rock and roll or something. And
Yeah.
the bar, and this white guy starts talking to him, and he says, I never heard a black man play like that. And he kind of says, because he says you play like Jerry Lee Lewis, and he says, well, Jerry Lee Lewis got his piano playing from black musicians. And the guy was like, what are you talking about? And they started to have a drink, and then he finally realizes that he's sitting with a guy who's in the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow.
And the Ku Klux Klan guy said, well, I'm in the Ku Klux Klan. I don't like black people, but you seem like a nice guy, so I'll come and see you next week. So the guy came back next week, and they started to become friends. And instead of this Daryl, I hope I'm saying his name right, Daryl Dobson, but
I'll find it though. Yeah.
instead of him saying, I hate you, you're racist, get away from me, he became friends with the guy. And at
Hmm.
the time, the guy would have him over for dinner. And eventually one day the guy calls him and he says, I need to talk to you. And they get together and he says, I'm gonna leave the Klan. He goes, I realize it's wrong and I've been wrong my whole life. And after getting to know you, I realize I've been wrong and I'm not gonna do it anymore. And he kept doing this with more and more Klan members.
Wow.
Not, how dare you and this thing. He would
Right.
be their friends, like, hey, you want to be friends and go to dinner? And
Hmm.
and through being, through love, they realize like I'm wrong.
Right.
Wrong.
And that's for the extremists. We talk about the Klan. That same principle needs to work because there's a lot of covert racism,
Right.
even right here in Los Angeles, even in the jazz world.
Yeah.
There's like it's never stated, but you can see things and feel things, and you have to understand them. And one of my things is the Four Agreements. I'm sure you've read that before.
Which one?
But the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
I need to read that. I haven't read it.
Okay. Yeah, well, so there's four agreements that I run my life by. Number one, the first one is I don't take anything personally. Never take anything personally. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's very important. We spend a lot of time taking things personally, which is what we talked about earlier. He vibed me.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on with that person.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? That's the first thing, which leads us to the second one. Never assume.
Mm-hmm.
Never assume. Ask questions like about, never assume that a guy hates you or that a guy likes you. You know, make it important. Never assume. So the first two is don't take it personally. Never assume. The third one is be impeccable with your word. Be who you are. Do what you say you're going to do and be who you say you are. Be impeccable with your word, whatever it is. And then the fourth one is always do your best. So those are four things that I go by in my life. I'm going to try to play my guitar the best, be the best person I can be. If somebody's got a problem, I'm not going to take it personally. I'm not going to assume what their problem is. And if I say it, you can pretty much take it to the bank. You know, so
I need to get that book.
yeah, Don Miguel Ruiz. It's called The Four Agreements. You
Okay.
know, and I read a lot of books like that. I'm also into. I don't know if you know David Goggins. Can't hurt me. Yeah,
Oh, Goggins. Yeah, isn't he like a fitness guy?
yeah. Goggins is a ex Navy SEAL. He's fitness,
Okay.
but it's beyond fitness. I
It's
mean, he is fit. He is Superman,
yeah.
but fitness is the effect of the cause.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My
You
friend
know.
tells me about him, and he says he's just an amazing. And I mean, like you said, fitness, but he turned his life around in general.
Oh, yeah, pretty much so. I mean, This guy is holds the world record for pull-ups. I think now.
Yeah.
He's all those races where you run through the desert. He's a Navy SEAL. He went through Navy SEAL training 3 times.
Wow.
Unheard of.
Wow. Yeah. And
Unheard of. I
very
mean,
overweight as a kid, I think, right?
he wasn't really as a kid. He got overweight. He was spraying bugs. He was an exterminator
Oh, okay.
and was 300 pounds at one point, and
Wow.
just looked in the mirror and said, "Is this my life?" Spraying roaches, 300 pounds, bad marriage, eating. He's if you read the book, he says he would go leave work at 3 or like at 7 o'clock in the morning because he did the overnight shift, and he stopped by Dunkin' Donuts or whatever and get 7-Eleven and just get a box of chocolate donuts and like some sugary drink, and he just got to the point of just And Goggins is like no excuse man. Now it's like he's won all these uphill in the desert races that nobody could do. I mean, with his knee broken, still running, overnight 50-mile rate. He's this guy.
Yeah.
So no excuses. So check him out, David Goggins. It's a great book.
Yeah, I'll check him out, man. I need to read a lot more books. I've been running around with my kid and practicing, and there's like a stack of books this high that I want to read and that I need to read. So
One of my techniques is Audible books. I love Audible because when I'm in the car or if I'm at home, I can put the earphones in and just listen.
smart.
And it gets in there deep too because he can hear what's going on. I still like a feel of a good book too, but in our day and age, it's kind of inconvenient because you just see it, like you said, stacked up. But if you set your intention, like, okay, I have a routine. 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up every morning at 6 o'clock.
Wow.
And I have this morning ritual that I do, my spiritual morning ritual. So by 6:30, 7 o'clock every other day, and then I'm outside working out.
Mhm.
Okay, so by 8 o'clock, 8:15, I'm moving into the rest of my day, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Um, and then I intermittent fast, so I eat 16:8.
Mhm.
So by about 10, 11 o'clock, 'cause I usually eat around 5 or 6, whatever time. I just make sure it's 16 hours after that. So, I'm pretty regimented and it helps me read books and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good.
You got to have a regimen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, a routine. Otherwise, you're just getting up in the morning. I mean, and people used to wonder, like, man, and prior to COVID, we had 4 gigs a week, 4 steadies. They're like, how do you get these gigs? It's not how do I get a gig. It's that we're impeccable with our word. We do our best. We
Yeah.
never assume, and we don't take it personally. That's what
Those
you
are
know.
words to live by, man.
And that's why the gigs lasted, and the club owners, they knew what they were going to get. I didn't take their little idiosyncrasies personally, and I didn't assume that it's going to last forever. I'd ask questions, and so they're all waiting for us to come back. Actually, if it ever comes back,
Well, I tell you, when it does, I want to come and hang, and I'd love to play with you at some point because we've never played
sure,
together, man. I'd love to.
sure. My house, mi casa, su casa. Come on by. You know what I'm saying, brother?
Yeah, that would be fun, man. Because I do have to wrap it up, but I had so much fun talking to you, man, and
You too. It's great. It's a great time, man. We can talk anytime, and you're always welcome. And just have fun on the next thing you're ready to go do. That's important,
yeah, yeah,
and go, and enjoy your family, man. Your wife, your kid. How old is your kid?
15.
They grow up. Trust me.
Fast, man. She's an amazing kid, so I'm very very proud of her, and I'm just really.
Mine are out of college
Oh wow, how many?
and working and doing it. Well, I have one more that's 21 that's still in college, but
Oh wow,
but 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 this is his senior year, so it's
wow.
a wrap.
Well, that's great, man. That's really cool.
Well, man, blessings to you. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, man. I appreciate
All
it. Have
right.
a great one. Okay.
All right. You too. All right. Bye, hon.
Bye bye.